Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is Tuesday, September 30th, 2025, and job losses in the oil and gas sector. Yep, they're coming, and lots of jobs and employment news, economy news, and that's not very good in the broad scale. People are losing jobs, and that's due to the financial mismanagement of the country and bad policies for the last 10 years. And it's not good because those roosters are coming home to roost. I think that's the phrase. And it's just the beginning. It's going to compound. The more the bad policies take effect and strangle our productivity, the more the job losses will snowball and so on and so forth. And so it's something to be aware of. And it's not good. The indications are not good. We've got to talk about Frances Widdowson and the University of Winnipeg and what's going on there. And she's gone to the University of Winnipeg. And I kind of talked about this yesterday, but today is Lies and Humiliation Day. So we've got to make sure we put a fine point on it. She went to the University of Winnipeg to challenge what they're teaching as truth about the mass graves on First Nations, on Catholic schools, the residential schools. And so because she did that, the faculty put out a statement about her that was misleading, and she was assaulted and verbally assaulted, all sorts of crazy stuff. And so she's going to be taking legal action, but it's unfortunate. I think our system is completely rigged. So man, that's terrible. Alberta teachers strike. I think there's a teacher strike going on in Alberta. And so things are not looking good. We've got Donald Trump, digital ID. Donald Trump weighing in on Tony Blair. And I found that funny because he says Tony Blair's a good guy. Tony Blair's he's a globalist, man. Holy smokerodies. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we got to do Lies and Humiliation Day. Today's September 30th. And it's a fake holiday meant to replace Thanksgiving, because you can't have two federal holidays within 2 weeks of each other. It just doesn't work. So they're going to get rid of one of them. Which one do you think it'll be? I bet you it'll be Pierre Poilievre who recommends the removal of Thanksgiving. Zachary says the Liberal government used the mass graves hoax to install a national neo-Marxist struggle session on September 30th. Do not participate, he says. Right? It's a good day to not participate in any of that stuff. Oh my gosh. I just realized I'm wearing an orange shirt. It is completely by coincidence. This is just a sweater that I usually wear. I've been wearing it for the last couple of days and it was cold and, well, it's coincidence. Anyway, sorry, everyone. Candace Malcolm, darn it. Do not wear orange. I'm sorry, Candace. Hold on. I'll take it off right now. Do not allow your children to participate in a humiliation ritual. That is true. It's a bad idea to teach your kids false things about history, and it's a super bad idea. And one of the things, Gord Downey, we were talking about this in my family, just at family dinner last night, and Gord Downey produced an album and a book about First Nations residential schools, blah, 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 blah. The album was very musically cacophonous. It wasn't very good. And the book looks like it's right out of concentration camps, and it looks very, very bad. The book paints a picture that is very, very negative of Canadians versus First Nation kids and things like that. And so, but it's not based in reality. It's based in Gord Downey's tumor, I think, and bad motivation. And maybe he was trying to do good with it, but they use this as a teaching tool, and it is traumatizing, for lack of a better word. And I think that that's really strange. And so you shouldn't allow your kids to participate in that kind of stuff. You should remove them from the class or allow them to remove themselves from the class or whatever. These things can be damaging. If you get told something that isn't true and you believe that it's true for a very long time, it can be damaging, right? And so that's not great. It's a very, very strange thing. Anyway, Candace says, do not wear orange. Yes, ma'am, you got it. Do not wear orange. Check. 2, do not allow your children to participate in a humiliation ritual. 3, do not allow our country to be hijacked by an anti-Canadian post-truth narrative. Too late. Do not submit to lies meant to divide us and destroy what our ancestors have built. Celebrate Canada, celebrate peace, prosperity, and friendship with the First Nations. Do that with an understanding of history, facts, and truth. That's the only way we survive. Right. I'm not saying, Canada wasn't built the way they say right now with the current zeitgeist of colonialism and evil people coming in and, peaceful First Nations coexisting side by side, kumbaya. The nation of Canada didn't exist. There was no cohesive country from coast to coast to coast. There was nothing there. There were places that had bands of First Nations controlling it, and you can see the maps of all of that. And the people who came to settle Canada certainly got into conflict with the Indians, as was done at the time, and they won, as was what happened at the time. And then, instead of slaughtering them all, as what may have happened at the time, some other different things happened. And is it perfect? No. Is it what they tell us it is? I don't think so. Not even a little bit. And so there's a whole lot of things that are being shoved down our throats, adults and kids, everybody, with media and all sorts of stuff that are incorrect. And I think that if you just treat other people with respect and expect to be treated with respect in return, regardless of skin color, blah, 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 all that stuff, then we'll get along just fine. But if you start saying, that guy right there is an Indian, you know what I mean? If you start responding to everybody as a race, then things are going to get bad quick. They may want that to get bad quick because, honestly, 20 years ago, race was the last thing on most people's mind. Obama started it, honestly, and then it got doubled down, tripled down, and quadrupled down on by the likes of Trudeau, and now they're using it to wedge. This is a wedge. The whole Truth and Reconciliation Day, Lies and Humiliation Day, is a wedge, and it's meant to drive people apart so they're not unified against the globalists who are taking over our country. Here's the Senate of Canada, and they say, today the flag on the Peace Tower will be flown at half-mast from sunrise to sunset to recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. I say Lies and Humiliation Day is a waste of time. Stop browbeating Canadians, right? So, yep, the Senate is doubling and tripling down on these lies. Here is Matt Walsh, and he is talking about the lies of all of this. Here we go.
That unmarked mass graves had been found at Canada's residential schools, which were boarding schools for Indian children that existed for about 100 years, peaking in the early 20th century. And the discovery of these unmarked mass graves was significant, Canadians were told, because Christian churches were running these residential schools.
Last year, archaeologists detected what they said could be 200 unmarked graves at this former school in Kamloops, British Columbia. Weeks later, a further 751 unmarked graves were detected across from the former Marival Residential School on the Cowessess Reserve in Saskatchewan.
More than 3 years later, not a single body has been found in any unmarked grave at any residential school anywhere in Canada. Turns out that, in fact, the alleged unmarked grave site in Kamloops was in reality a 2,000-foot-long, 3-foot-deep trench that was established in 1924 as a septic field to store sewage from the school.
Right. And I haven't fact-checked that, but plausible. There's all sorts of different reasons. People said that the penetrating ground penetrating radar picks up stumps and rocks, and these stumps and rocks were misdiagnosed. That's not the right thing. Misattributed. That's probably it, as being grave sites, but they're not they're not grave sites, and it's just a rock or a stump or roots or whatever it is, right? And so it's very, very interesting to see this wedge being driven in this way through schools, through employment, through government, and everywhere. You can't get away from it, right? The other thing that I find very strange, and this isn't just for Lies and Humiliation Day, this is all time of the year, is the radio stations are now using the names, the First Nations names, instead of the names of the city. Like Kitchener's radio station doesn't say Kitchener's radio station. They say they're broadcasting from somewhere else. And Guelph's radio station doesn't say Guelph. We're broadcasting from, I don't know, I can't remember the name, but I don't listen to it because I turn it off when they start talking about it. But they all push this idea that the society we built isn't good or shouldn't be around, or we don't talk about Guelph anymore. We don't say that name anymore. Like Guelph is trans and it's moved back over to being, its First Nations name or something like that. That's not how this works, right? And if the government is not willing to firm up the rules on this, man, I don't know. There's very damaging things happening to this country, and it's never going to be the same. And we're already past. In 2018, I saw a pathway back to how it was, right? And now, 2025, I don't think that I do see a pathway back to the way it was. I think that I see if we are able to save some scraps of the way it used to be, we'll be lucky. I think that what's happening right now, we're in a vice and they're turning the vice, and the pressure is increasing. And after that happens, you're changed forever. You can't go back. And I wish that weren't so, but it is so. Max says, leaked from the University of Winnipeg. Let's talk about speech as it applies to Lies and Humiliation Day, and indeed the truth about the grave sites and things like that. Max says, leaked email from the University of Winnipeg's history department branded Frances Widdowson as a denialist and mobilized students against her. Now she's been physically and verbally assaulted. Universities have become indoctrination camps, crushing free speech with fascism. Yes, indeed. And it says, dear all, this is an email from the history department. I've not fact-checked this, but I believe this to be true. So take everything with a grain of salt. It's the internet, okay? So, but I believe this to be true. Dear all, the history department recently developed the following statement to be shared with all current history students. I hope you all take good care of yourselves, and please be aware of the support services available to your students. You may contact the Aboriginal Student Services Center, Student Wellness Center, Student Wellness and Counseling Services, and blah, 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 blah. Statement by the Department of History, University of Winnipeg on potential University of Winnipeg visit by Frances Widdowson. Former Mount Royal University professor Frances Widdowson has announced plans to stage an event platforming Indian residential school denialism at University of Winnipeg this week. Widdowson was fired from MRU in 21-22 in part due to public statements criticizing the Black Lives Matter movement and lauding the benefits of Indian residential schools. There were instances where families wanted their children to attend the residential schools because otherwise those children would starve. The crash of 1929 impacted that quite a lot, but there was a lot of good being done by the residential school system that was run by the Catholic Church up until 1969, when it was Jean Chrétien took over as I believe it was the Indian minister, but he took over the residential schools. You know what's weird? If he was in charge of a genocide from 1969 to 1971, I think there were stints where he was kind of touching it for that 10 years. Don't you think they would have some questions for him? Don't you think maybe somebody would bring him in and say, why did you allow a genocide to continue under your watch? Why did successive governments from the 70s to the 2000s, or right up to 1990, I think it was 1997 that the last residential school closed in Canada. How come nobody in the Canadian government wanted to stop that for that 30 years? Like, what? It doesn't make any rational sense. Now they call it residential school denialism. And you can't talk about the benefits of the residential school within the context, or you get fired. Jim McMurtry was fired as a teacher for saying, listen, like what they're telling you didn't actually happen. And he got fired for that. They'll suppress this video just for the name alone, I think. Like, I was thinking to myself that the stream wouldn't work, but it is working. So, hey, there we go. But it's an interesting thing when you try and add context to the truth of history, and people will say, you deserve to be fired because of residential school denialism, or you deserve to be fired because of whatever it is. And so it's just an interesting world that you can't even say, hold on, these schools, these residential schools weren't 100% bad. They had elements of goodness in them. And also, you couldn't hold the government that had control of these residential schools. The government had control of these residential schools from the 70s. They committed genocide, and nobody's been perp walked, not one person. Super weird. But we're not going to ever forget Truth and Reconciliation Day, right? Bullshit. What nonsense. Widdowson, back to this. Widdowson also planned events at University of Manitoba this week, specifically targeting the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation and IRS denialism scholars Sinclair and Carlton. Widdowson is known for creating public confrontation, filming it, and sharing it publicly to draw attention to herself. That's not what she does. She's trying to talk about the truth around this whole grave site hoax. Sinclair addressed her visit in this Winnipeg Free Press column, so they're circulating propaganda to bolster their claims. On Monday, where he shares some strategies for engagement or non-engagement specifically, residential school denialism is mythologically rooted in hate and racism and has zero factual basis. It does have factual basis. IRS denialists cherry pick evidence to support their arguments. Nope. And ignore the massive body of academic scholarship. Academic scholarship is bullshit. archival documents and survivor testimonies can be changed that clearly disprove their theories. For more in IRS denialism and how to counter IRS denialist rhetoric, we encourage students to read Sean Carlton and Daniel Heath Justice. The history department condemns IRS denialism and any platforming of IRS rhetoric on campus with compassion and support. We also acknowledge the harm that IRS denialism has on survivors, their families, and communities. University of Winnipeg faculty and staff are actively engaged in addressing Widowson's planned visit with the University of Winnipeg's administration. The Indigenous Student Services Center will be contacting Indigenous students to inform them of steps being taken to support Indigenous students. So the university themselves talked and prepped people for her visit and then activated a bunch of Indigenous people and informed them of the steps being taken to protect them. And so in doing so, she was assaulted. Pretty crazy stuff. Here's video of the assault, but Frances Widdowson herself says, here's an important clip for charges that will be laid with Winnipeg police this week. 1 orange shirt female cry bullying, pouring water on my sound system. 2 orange shirt female cry bully spitting on a bystander. And 3 deranged man punching Daniel Page Wizard Games. And so, yeah, pretty wild stuff. We're not going to watch the video just because the left are crazy. Well, do you guys want to watch? We'll watch some of the video. Here's just a little bit of Frances Widdowson in Winnipeg.
There's a bunch of people who almost really got into serious violence.
Did you see what happened to me?
It was bad. It was really bad. And of course, Daniel got roughed up.
The security did nothing.
I know.
I got it all on footage.
Yeah, I tried.
They walked past me too as they were doing it too.
We told
They
them
did
to
nothing.
stop surrounding her.
So I was over here at I was with Dr. Widdowson here, and I'm just doing my usual thing. I just come with my camera, and then I got surrounded. First, I was inquired by some Indigenous ladies here, and then suddenly a couple of individuals who I saw yesterday at University of Manitoba surrounded me. Oh.
Good job, jerk. Good job, jerk.
All disgusting. You just spat on somebody. Isn't that disgusting?
So these guys, the orange shirt lady is planning on attacking as well. Pretty wild stuff. These people are brazen. They know they're not going to get in any kind of trouble, and that's very, very strange. Tara says Premier Wab Canoe must apologize to Professor Frances Widdowson for the abuse that she suffered at the University of Winnipeg. Her freedom of expression was trampled by a mob of activists. As a BC MLA, I'm speaking out. Will any Manitoba politicians stand with me? So here we go.
I am calling on Manitoba Premier Wab Canoe and the government of Manitoba to issue an official apology to Professor Frances Widdowson for the abuse she suffered at the University of Winnipeg from students and activists.
On these grounds. This is Treaty 1 territory. This land belongs to our First Nation people, not you white people. You are a visitor. You are a visitor on our land.
Because I'm here to do my event.
Does it look like where are you having an event?
Frances is a courageous speaker who wanted to hold an event to have discussions with people who both agreed and disagreed with her. I am speaking out on this issue, even though I am an MLA from British Columbia, because I fear nobody in elected office in Manitoba, provincially or federally, will speak out. Universities are supposed to be places of open discourse and respect for other points of view. Governments all over Canada need to enforce the law on these campuses and prevent assault and criminal harassment from taking place against speakers that activists simply disagree with.
Good for her for speaking out. I don't know. I don't know if it's going to turn the tide. I mean, I hope so, but I don't know if it's going to turn the tide. It is scary that this is the way it's gone. Dalhousie, Table Salt says, Dalhousie University rolls out a new blanket DEI hiring policy. Preference will be given to Indigenous people of Turtle Island, African Nova Scotians, or other racialized groups, persons with disabilities, women, persons identifying as members of the gay communities, etc. Zachary accurately says race Marxism, and I think that that's very, very true. We'll do some job losses stuff. I've got to say goodbye to the stream soon, and sorry about that. But Global News is reporting Calgary-based oil and gas giant Imperial Oil announces plans on Monday to lay off 20%. That's a huge amount, 1 in 5, right? Of the company's employees by the end of 27. So coming soon and coming fast, economic force. Right? How do we become that 51st state, Mr. Trump? Kirk says Canada's trade with Iceland was worth $212 million last year. Exports 51 million, imports 160 million. This could have been an email. Get to work. I don't want Mark Carney to do any work because he will censor the internet. Okay. Mark Carney says, pleasure to meet with Prime Minister Kristen F. today. We're working together to elevate our trade and security partnership to create a more secure Arctic and empower Canadians and Icelanders alike with greater prosperity and opportunities. The army that defends the Arctic, now the North Arctic region, is the United States Army. It's not the Canadian Army. So we're not doing anything up there. Nothing at all. Here is Quandra Homes, CEO, and he says, this is going to take 114 years to pay back on the energy savings, so why are we doing this? No, it's too long. He says BC's incoming energy efficiency and carbon reduction rules will add $25,000 to the cost of a new home, and that'll take 114 years to pay back on the energy savings. Why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense financially. And so that's accurate. Olivia Chow is complaining that Toronto doesn't have any money because of all the migrants. They spent $107 million over budget because of the refugees, and the mayor says if the federal government doesn't help, she has to raise taxes on Torontonians to pay for all these foreigners.
We have been providing shelter to people who arrived to Toronto fleeing violence, war, and persecution. But now the federal government won't pay their bills for the service, and the city is short by $107 million. We can either stop sheltering refugees claimants, leave them on the street, which will make homelessness worse, reversing the progress we made on reducing the number of encampments. Or Torontonians will have to pay for it through their property taxes. Neither is fair.
Neither is fair.
We have been providing shelter to people who are
deporting them is fair. Deporting them is fair. Neither is fair. Bruce says, let me get this straight. Toronto paid for putting up refugees in hotels, paying $84 a day for food and giving them education and free healthcare. Now they're in debt, $107 million. I'm shocked, right? So the Canadian homeowners and taxpayers get dinged yet again. Was the city under the impression that the feds would reimburse them? How much money did the city of Toronto pitch in for the Diwali festival at Melasman Square last week for Indians, while homeless Canadians languish on the streets wanting maid? Right, so we spend a ton of money on this Indian festival. What? We're hundreds of millions of dollars in debt. Why are we spending money on Indian festivals? Here's Mayor Chow doing a taco dance. I wish I was kidding.
They so have the salsa, the guacamole, and the different vegetable, different salads, and then different cheese, and then you have the chicken, and then you have the shrimp, and then you have the beef. You have soft taco, and then corn taco, and this kind of taco, like, so I love having taco parties. They so have the salsa, the guacamole, and the...
Yeah, so what is happening? Unbelievable stuff coming out of Toronto, and I don't know what to think because it's all so ridiculous. It's all so shockingly ridiculous. And with that, we have to say goodbye to the stream. Thanks for watching, everybody.